Please note this event is being recorded and is currently live on Facebook. The recording will be on the Career DFW Facebook page and on the Career YouTube channel for others to view in the future. By participating in this event, and if you post a comment in the chat box or have your microphone or camera on, you give consent for your comments, name, and pictures to appear. My name is Jeff Morris. I founded Career DFW back in 2008 to help the unemployed in the DFW area. In 2012, I started CareerUSA.org after a trip to the White House and seeing that nobody else was doing anything like this around. Since 2007, I facilitate and lead the North Dallas Plano Career Focus Group, and I've been a member of the practice interview team since 2017. Today, our speaker is Jack Bick. Jack is a lifelong journalist and marketer. In his first career, he distinguished himself as a startup and turnaround specialist, founding 12 business journals and magazines and bringing back 7 to profitability. Locally, he was publisher of the Dallas Business Journal, which I get every week, and Inside Collin County Business. Since retiring, he's combined his abilities with a hands-on approach to become a subject matter expert on career strategies. He has written 2 books, Be Mission Critical and The Champion Way, which illustrates that job search should be highly personal involvement in marketing processes. Today, he'll present ideas from his book, The Champion Way, concerning maximum conversation into the interview. So Jack, thank you for being with us, and I'll stop sharing and it's all yours.
Thank you, Jeff. And good afternoon to everybody out there. And we're going to talk about how to get the maximum conversation into your interview. So first, we must realize a few things. Number one, when you're in the interview, you have to share control. You don't give all the control up to them, and you should all the control yourself. You must have pre-information in order to do a good job in the interview. Number 3, you must be one of the top 3 candidates before the interview. And you must ask questions in order to keep the conversation going. So let's just talk about the pre-information. When you're setting up an interview with someone, you want to make sure that you cover all the bases so that you can be articulate, informed, and on time. Timing is very important. So when you're setting up an interview, you don't always have to wait for them to call you. You can call them, especially if you've done a good job of setting up champions inside your target company. Then you can have them open the door and you can call and actually set up an interview. And it doesn't have to be a formal interview. It can, anytime you're in front of somebody who can hire you, that's an interview. They're going to consider it that way, and you should consider it that way. So, but you need to cover the who, what, where, when, why, and how in order to be fully informed and be able to put the most conversation into that amount of time that you have. So it's who to be in that meeting and what's their contact information. If you don't have their contact information, you don't know where to send a thank you. You don't know where to follow up. So you need to find out that information. And they already know those things about you. So you should be able to have the information about them. Then the what. What style of interview is it going to be? One of my clients walked into TI at 8 o'clock in the morning for an interview, for a 1-hour interview, and was told that she had a half an hour to prepare a presentation. And then she had a half hour to make that presentation. She was totally caught off guard, and she did not do well. So you should know what is going to happen, what style of interview is it going to be. Is it going to be a panel? Is it going to be one person? Is it going to be a presentation? Is it going to be behavioral? Are there set questions? You should know all those things so that you can feel comfortable going into that process. Where? You need to know specifically where you're going to be. I went into a meeting one time and I asked for the person, and the receptionist had no idea who that person was. It took us 15 minutes to find him. And so you don't know what's going to happen when you go in there, but you should know who you're going to meet and what room they're going to be in, and know exactly what entrance to go into so that you're not late. I have one client who was 15 minutes late for Erickson because he tried every door, and it was, of course, the last one that where he was supposed to be. So you want to know specifically where this interview is going to take place. When is very important. We all know, we're going to find out what time it's going to start, but we need to find out what time it's going to end. Because you have to pace yourself for the amount of time that you have. Sometimes it's 15 minutes, sometimes it's an hour and 15 minutes. One time I was on an interview for a part-time coaching job, and they told me it was an hour and a half. And then when the lady got on the interview, she said, well, we're going to cut this short at an hour. I have another interview immediately after yours. So at 10 minutes it was started at noon, 10 minutes to 1, I started closing the interview because I wanted to be able to do my closing. And she said, oh, I've already told my receptionist or my assistant, we're going to go over. So you don't have to start closing right now. And, I mean, she's a coach. She knew what I was doing. And I said, well, actually what I was doing was I was trying to end it so that you'd have 5 minutes to yourself before the next interview. You think I got points for thinking of her? Absolutely. So who, what, where, when, why? Why did you get picked? Why did your resume stand out from the others? Wouldn't it be good to know that? I know Walt likes that question, but I think it's a pre-question. It's a pre-interview question, because then you get time to think about it and be prepared and be able to put it into your opening statement. And lastly, how? How is the room going to be set up? Is it going to be somebody's office? Is it going to be in a boardroom? What's the situation? Is it going to, you don't want to all of a sudden find out you're going out to lunch with them. And I mean, that might throw you off. So you want to know the situation. If you know all this information, then you've got a much better chance of doing a good job in this interview. And if they're reluctant to give you this information, remind them they know all the information. Remind them that they want you to do a good job. because you're there to help them. You want to help them, and they haven't brought you in just because they needed to talk to a bunch of people. They have an honest need for you or somebody like you. And you want to be able to do the best that you can. Now let's talk a little bit about being one of the top 3 candidates before you ever go to the interview. I think it's very difficult if you're in the 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th, 9th, 10th position, and believe me, they rank them. And maybe not specifically 1, 2, 3, but they know who their top 3 candidates are. They know who their bottom 3 candidates are, and they know who's in between. It's very difficult for you to jump over the others, and here's why. Not only do you have to do a good job, but everybody in front of you has to do a bad job. They have to mess it up. And count on that. That is not in your control. So it's for you to operate in a way that puts you in that number 1, 2, or 3 position. And the way to get there is how you go about getting to that interview. My book outlines the way, a very personalized way, very personal involvement, where you develop champions on the inside of target companies. Forget going to posted jobs. You want to be able to you want to impress them ahead of time, so you want to develop ahead of time in order for them, because they're powerful allies. Not only can they advocate for you, and that's a third-party endorsement, but they can feed you information. All these people that tell you how to do, I see where on Thursday, there's effective resumes. Well, let me tell you, and I have a certain way I tell people to do resumes in general. But if a champion tells you a certain way to do your resume because that's the way the company likes it, then do it their way. Because that's what they're expecting, and that's the way they want to do business. That becomes much more effective. And I have no idea what they're going to talk about tomorrow. But so if you operate in a professional way and you're able to get around their HR department and all the competition and all the confusion, they're going to give you some points because you were resourceful enough to develop those champions and get in. That's how you get to be in the number 1, 2, or 3 position. Then it's all of a sudden it's the day you show up for your interview. And okay, we have a question from Patty. And how long is the typical interview nowadays from round 1 to decision by the company? Most interviews are an hour. But I can tell you this, it doesn't matter what time they tell you that the interview is going to end. When they stop listening, it's over. And if they stop listening in 15 minutes, it's over. They might be polite and stay there, but they're not really listening. So Oh, start to finish. Okay, the whole process. Sorry, I misinterpreted that. But remember that you got to keep them listening. The whole process. Lately, I've seen it go a week. I've seen it go up to 3 weeks. But I don't. I'm not seeing these long, drawn out interview processes anymore. I think companies are just getting used to doing the Zooms, and they're becoming more comfortable with it, and they're willing to find out. I don't think they're calling in as many people. Typically, they're going to talk to 10. I'm seeing this, it's more like 3, 4, or 5 people. The last 3 people who landed, who went through my course, have gotten jobs in a fairly short time. So she says that she's got one of hers is now in week 7. Patty, how many people are still in the race? Do you know? They're still interviewing, so that would be an indication that they're keeping you in the queue, but that you haven't gotten to the point where you have distinguished yourself from everybody else. And I would look at the process that you've been through and how can you break into the top 3. So now as we go into the interview, we want to be able to set the tone and not get caught in a firing squad situation. It is very difficult to distinguish yourself when you're in a firing squad situation. Now, there's a lot of different ways to massage this, but you need to have an opening statement. It's very important that you get across some basic ideas before you get into the interview. The first one is, the first thing you want to do is show your enthusiasm. Now, everybody's going to do that. However, if you connect your enthusiasm to something that you know about the company, and you should do your research, deep research into what this company is all about, then your enthusiasm carries more weight. It has more substance. Besides that, they know that you've researched. You've taken some time, and that makes them, because it's your job to make them think that this is only the whole life that you'd ever want to consider. So you've got enthusiasm, and the second thing is tie it to something you know about the company. Then you give a very quick synopsis of your attributes that you think they would be interested in. And you take this from the research that you've done about the company and the job description. You should be tying almost everything you say to what they ask for in the job description. But you shouldn't take long with that. The whole opening statement should not take more than 90 seconds. Now that sounds like a very short period of time. It is, but if you discipline yourself to be able to say the most in that short period of time, then you will be able to keep it down to 90 seconds. So, and then you end it with what I call the trigger question. You ask them, what are the 3 characteristics that make someone successful in this job? There's several ways to ask that question, but essentially you want to accomplish 2 things. You want to get them talking, and you want to get information that will help you as you go through the interview. You are there to sell, and unless you ask some question similar to this, you're not going to know what they're buying. And in a series of interviews, you probably talk to 3 or 4 people. You've got to find out what each one of them wants. What are each one of them buying? And if you can tie yourself to that, then you're going to do a better job of the interview, and you're going to have a better chance of being their #1 candidate. Are there any questions at this point? So the whole objective is that you get them talking. And it's all right to take notes, but I would ask permission to do so. And that way you keep straight what their 3 answers are. They might ask more. They might give you more. Okay, Kelly, the trigger question is, what are the 3 characteristics that make people successful in this job? What are the 3 characteristics that make people successful in this job? So now you've set the tone, you've given them something about yourself, and you've gotten them talking. Now they're going to start asking questions. But during this phase, this is the conversation phase. If you have to ask questions in addition to them asking questions. If you don't, you're going to slip back into the firing squad. You're going to feel like you're being grilled. And that's not what you want. It's difficult to distinguish yourself when you're in that phase, if you're just asking questions. Now, there are 3 types of questions that you can ask. #1, prepared questions. In my book, I outline about 10 questions that can be asked, and you have to prioritize these questions. Because if you think about an hour interview and they ask a few questions, you ask a few questions, and you have maybe a couple minutes of the lead in and maybe 10 minutes for the closing, you're only going to get a chance to ask about 5 or 6 questions. They'll get a chance to ask 7 or 8. So prepared questions are things like, what will be my challenge the first month I'm there? What do you expect from me that you weren't getting from the previous person in this job? Things of that nature where it shows you want to do a good job. Secondly, you want to ask questions that come from their question. So that's a reaction question. So if they say, well, how would you handle a disgruntled customer? You can answer that, but you can ask a question at the end of it, such as, what is the protocol here at ABC Corporation for handling that? Or you can ask, how often does that happen? Or so on. So it shows that you really want to get a lot of information. So in order to better show that you can do the job and want to do a good job. The last is what I call the tell me about question. Those are questions about things that they didn't bring up, but you want to. So maybe they say during the interview or during the answer to the trigger question could be that they were interested in attention to detail. So you ask, tell me what having attention to detail means here at ABC Corporation. And that way they know, because you asked the question, that you're interested in that. So you want to be able to talk about every one of those three answers to the trigger question in order to make sure that you've covered all the bases. After all, they said it was important by just bringing it up, in your answer. So those three tactics are ways that you can keep the conversation going without it seeming like you're trying to grill them. Are there any questions about that? The trigger question and asking these three types of questions is the key to keeping maximum conversation going. Okay? But the conversation is not over. You want to be able to close the session and do it effectively so it moves you ahead and differentiates you from everybody else who's applying for this job or who's interviewing for this job. So the way to close is to start with a summary of what had been talked about. What were the three top topics that you talked about in the conversational stage of the interview? You bring those up and you give an R for each one of them and a result from your star stories, so that they know that in those 3 situations, you can get results. You have in the past and you will in the future. Once you have done that, then you start asking questions that can help you understand the rest of the process and where you stand. You should never, ever leave an interview without knowing where you stand. I can guarantee you, if you don't know as you walk away from an interview where you stand, then you do not stand at the front of the line. So one of the questions that you can ask, and there's several, but just come out and ask. What's the rest of the process here? You know, they have a protocol. Although this morning I heard from a lady that I've been coaching, and the HR department was doing everything wrong, and it was almost like they were trying to discourage her, but they kept moving her along. But so, and in fact, she's got another interview tomorrow morning. But then you can ask, you know, is there anything that would prevent me from moving it forward in this process? Or you can ask, how do I match up with the ideal candidate, not the other candidates? Because you don't care. You have your competition at this point is the ideal candidate. And the one I like finally is, do you like me for this job? Can you see me in this job? And the good part about that is that you can ask that even if you're among a group of peers, which seems to be part of the process these days, having you talk with the other people on the team. So you can ask them, you see me in this job? And if they hesitate or say no, that's not a good sign, because those people can say no. They can't say yes, but they can say no. But do you see me in this role? If they say yes, then you can go to a hard close. Will you give me a formal offer letter? Where would my desk be? What's my start date? Is it all right if I bring my dog to work? No, don't ask that. If they say no, you know you got some more work to do. And here's where you can really distinguish yourself, differentiate yourself in a way where they think about it deeply. You say, I might have missed something, so tell me what you don't see that you need to know in order to hire me. If you just ask, hey, what's wrong here? They're probably not going to tell you because they've been trained not to give you reasons because you could make a lawsuit out of those reasons. But if you take the blame, oh, I missed something. Tell me what I can do to fully inform you. Then you've got a better chance of finding out. And here's where the real salesmanship comes in. And it's very easy. So very easy. Once they tell you what's wrong, maybe they say you don't have enough technical knowledge. You want to come back to them with something that says, if I show you that I have the technical knowledge you're looking for, will you hire me? When we started using that simple line at the business journals, our sales went up 14% overnight. Overnight. It was amazing. And we were already the #1 business journal in the country. So it wasn't like we were really lacking. And this brought us up to normal. We were the leader, and it put us way out in front. If I can show you, and then fill in the blank, will you hire me? Now you've got a qualified yes. You've moved off of maybe or no to a qualified yes. And then you go about showing where the technical things that you didn't bring out before. Rely on star stories. That makes it real. One star story is equal to at least 10 generalizations. Generalizations don't move you forward. Specific, quantifiable R's from star stories move you forward. Tracy, did I answer your question there? Well, I hope so. So basically, that's the start. Okay, there it is. Yes. Good. So we've gotten time here for questions. Why don't you unmute and just ask the question.
Hello, Addison Carey checking in.
I'm sorry?
Addison Carey checking in. I have a question.
Yes.
Yeah, my question is, once like the HR person says that you have an interview with the hiring manager, how much lead time do you want to get before you have the interview? Is it going to be like the next day or 2 days? I guess that's the first part of my question.
Well, that's a good question, and here's why. Because you don't want it to be tomorrow, and you don't want to be from now, because they might forget you in that time. You want a couple of days to think about it and to do some more research and make sure that you're grounded, but you don't want it to be too long. I would suggest 2 or 3 days.
Okay.
That would give you enough time to do your research.
Yeah, and my follow-up to that is, what if due to their schedule and your schedule, you don't have 2 or 3 days? You can only do it either, this afternoon or tomorrow.
Try and get it to be tomorrow.
Okay, if at all possible, try to push it to tomorrow.
Right.
Okay.
Exactly. And that's what happened with this lady. They wanted to meet this afternoon, but she knew she wouldn't have time to talk to me, to coach her. So she put it off till tomorrow. So we discussed it, and we're probably going to discuss it again this evening, and then she's going to go in prepared. Okay?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anybody else have questions for Jack?
This is Kimber. I have a question. I'm curious about where the opening statement fits in. You walk in maybe to someone's office, you shake hands, you have a seat, you exchange a pleasantry, and then do you just dive in and start telling them about yourself? Or I'm not sure really where it fits into the first few minutes of an interview.
You should make your opening statement as early as possible, because it is it's called an opening statement. So you want to open with that. And if you can do that before they start asking questions, I think that's good. But if they ask a question like, tell me about yourself, well, your opening statement, enthusiasm, knowledge of the company, a little bit about your attributes, that all fits into answering that question. So most of the time, their opening question is kind of a softball, and the opening statement is your answer.
Very good. Thank you.
Does that answer it?
Yes, that's great. Thanks.
Okay, 3 for 3. Okay, any more?
All right, well, I don't see anybody else. So Jack, thank you very much. For those of you who maybe would like to connect with Jack, this is what his LinkedIn page looks like. If you want to link in with him, be sure to send Jack a personal note, like you would send anybody a personal note, telling him about, thanking him for being part of this presentation, and what you appreciate him for doing.
Jeff, could I make an offer?
Yes,
to
go
everybody?
ahead. Yeah.
If you send me your resume, I will, at no cost to you, review it and get back to you within a couple of days. All you have to do is email your resume to me, and I will be happy to take some time to look at it and give you some feedback on it. And I'm going to see if I can put it into
While you put your email in the chat box, while we have.
how do I get it open? It's got Walt there in private.
You want to click on that little where it says to everybody, and just where it says to, click on the little up arrow and click everybody.